once told me a story from when he was in Vietnam in the 1960s. He told me about a mission where he and one other American with 5 CIDG strikers, South Vietnamese villagers turned fighters, were tasked to emplace seismic ground sensors along a trail network deep in the jungle. He said they were about 2 days into the mission when he and 2 of the strikers split off from the main group to go watch a nearby trail intersection. He said the jungle was pretty quiet that day, just the sounds of birds and bugs and an occasional monkey. He said they had been watching the trail intersection for about 3 or 4 hours and were deciding on whether to move further down the trail or to turn back and link up with the rest of the patrol. Before leaving the cover of the brush, my dad said he checked the trail ahead of them one last time and prepared his men to move. Now here is where the story gets interesting, and he told this part with absolute dead seriousness. He said just as he started to step out onto the trail, he sees a light-skinned black Union cavalry soldier in full battle gear laying alongside the trail just shy of the intersection. My dad said the Union soldier had 2 pistols, a Spencer rifle, and a short curved club at his hip. As my dad was trying to process what he was seeing, the soldier looked directly at him and smiled. Then the soldier slowly placed a finger up to his lips, as if to tell him to be silent, and then motioned my dad back off the trail. My dad said he signaled for his men to remain hidden, and he recalled that as he slipped back into the jungle on one side of the trail, the Union soldier did the same on his side of the trail. Less than 10 seconds later, he said the lead element of a group of NVA, North Vietnamese Army soldiers, walked right through the trail intersection some 30 feet away. My dad estimated that the group was comprised of some 70, 80 soldiers, equipped with automatic rifles, light machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. He has no doubt that his entire team would have been wiped out on the spot. He said as soon as the enemy soldiers had passed, he and his team beat feet out of there as fast and as quietly as they could, and rejoined with the rest of the patrol. He reported the enemy soldiers his team had encountered, but decided not to say anything about the soldier he had seen. My dad kept this secret for many, many years, only telling me just before he passed, and earlier, only telling his grandmother on her deathbed in the 1970s. This one isn't particularly scary, but still a very odd supernatural experience I had. So once when I was maybe 8 or 9, I was at an after-school club, the kind of place you go when both of your parents work after school hours, and you can't be trusted home alone, with 3 of my friends at the time. It was winter, and although it was probably only 5 or 6 p.m., it was very dark out. We were in the big school playground where the club was hosted, and we were all playing around and making up monster stories. So, on to the point. We were already spooked out, talking about scary films we had seen and whatnot, when suddenly my friend says, "Guys, do you see that?" We all turn to where she is looking, and one by one, all 4 of us see this oily black silhouette of a tall man walking through our gym hall. Our school was built around the same time Titanic was, and had huge windows surrounding the large PE hall. At this time, there is still a janitor in the school, but we can clearly see her on the 2nd floor. The lights are still on in the hall, and there is no obvious explanation to what this figure could be. Being curious, idiotic children, we decide to get closer and try to get a better look. Well, as we do, we seem to scare it off as it disappears between 2 of the towering windows. This isn't the end, though, as whilst we're trying to figure out what just happened, I see the gym hall door slide open a crack, and I kid you not, the lights in the room this thing has supposedly just entered flicker badly. We name this thing the Black Blur because of its oily color and strange movement. Anyway, fast forward maybe a year or 2. Me and one of the people from the previous encounter are still very racked up in all this paranormal stuff XD. We are both standing relatively close to one of the school's entrances, also in the evening at the after-school club. One of the 2 double doors is propped open with bin bags from the janitor. We are looking at it and talking to each other about how it kind of looks like a vampire all curled up. We were bored, okay, Lowell. Anyway, something catches my eye. Only 10 to 15 meters in front of me. I see it again, but way more vivid. I am literally too stunned to speak as I stare at it. I must have looked so stupid to my friend, until he followed my line of sight and saw it too. Lo and behold, the black blur is running back and forth across the door. Now I can guarantee you, this wasn't my eyes playing tricks on me. This thing ran back and forth at the door for a good 20 seconds, going right, then left, then right, then left, and so on. My friend saw it too and said, "Hey, do you see that?" I nodded, and we slowly crept closer like the previous encounter. Disappeared again. Damn it. It's been years since then and I have never encountered it since, and I probably never will as I'm obviously long gone from that school. I kept in touch with these friends, and they all remember it clear as day like I do. I honestly hope to see the black blur again, and since I live within sight range of my old school, I just might one day. I have a few throughout my life where I try to forget them fairly fast because I hate being scared, and I don't deal well with anything scary. Yup, I am a big scarred man who can't even watch horrors. I used to live in Poland in a small town that bordered with a vast ancient national forest. And I mean it was huge. It extended into 3 counties. Beautiful forest too, plenty of natural variety of terrain. It was also a forest where Germans used to bury dead bodies of concentration camp victims. Plenty of ruins due to bombardments, stuff like that. I used to hike a lot with my friends, because we could never sit in one place as teenagers. And on more than one occasion, we encountered the lonely staircase deep in the forest. Never approached it though. Always wondered why it was there, especially since we were at least 20 kilometers deep in the woods, with no old or new signs of human buildings. While hiking alone, I remember it was such a weird day. Although it was beautiful and warm in June, I constantly felt watched from inside the woods. I was on a very wide path that on my left hand open fields, and on the right had the forest. And for the whole time I felt this strange sensation. I was young and stupid and thought, it's just my anxiety. And I decided to prove to myself it's nothing. So I ventured into the forest, and yes, there was nothing. But eventually I came across a very old, huge head oak, growing in a forest of young birches I think they were. But it was surrounded by a circle of dead grass that separated it from everything else. The tree was blackened, and when you entered that circle, it seemed like the weather changed from sunny to cloudy, and all birds stopped singing. I got scared really fast, and noped out of there. When I was 17, my best friend and I went on a long hiking trip in July, to his favorite place where he would dig out stuff. He was an avid collector of WW2 memorabilia, and would venture around the place with his metal detector, finding coins, bullet shells. He once even found and reported a wreck of a downed military plane to the local museum. The place was a site of an old German restaurant that was demolished after the war. It used to have a small pond, and people would come there for dinners and just to relax in the serene area. It was a fairly short 12 kilometers hike, and yeah, the area was lovely. Small hills, fields of wild flowers, and the only thing left out of the old building was a concrete bridge. He showed me the places he was digging in, and he was on spot. There were plenty of broken German bottles, twisted cutlery, gorgeous decorative plates and stuff. Most of it was smashed, probably from when the building was demolished. After about an hour we stood on that bridge, and he was showing off all the intact stuff he found, and at that time we started hearing drumming of sorts. But as teenagers we ignored it, because it probably came from the dual carriageway. But the drumming continued, and after a few minutes, it got louder, and both of us started getting scared, and the logical brain went on, and I remember we said to each other, the dual carriageway is about 5 kilometers away from here, and there is no way a car with any kind of stereo system could be this loud. It wasn't until long till we decided to leg it, and I mean we ran. It wasn't until long till we decided to leg it, and I mean we ran. About 10 minutes into the jog, we noticed collapsed trees that looked like they snapped halfway, which freaked us even more because we didn't see those on the way there and we literally just walked this way earlier. And we could still hear those beastly drums. Eventually, we ran out of the forest into a path that led to a small village, and the first thing we saw was a black goat, one of those mountain ones with long black horns that looked like antlers standing there alone on the field looking at us. If I was alone, I would have pissed my pants. After this, we never went back to the forest, and he stopped going out digging. When I was 22, I moved to the UK, and I've been living here for many years, and I have had a few odd encounters since I got my dog 4 years ago when I went out with her later in the evening, and you know how dark it gets in the UK in November after 5 p.m. I used to live in a small village with those nice big open park areas between houses, and it happened 4 or more times that I saw a lonely figure standing there, maybe 100 meters or 150 away under a lamppost, looking at me, never moving, wearing a hood, and what I assume were baggy clothes, so it was hard to tell if it was a man or a woman, but just standing there, never moving. It was really unnerving. Every time I did my round, that person was there, under a random lamppost in the distance, no matter if it was snowing or raining, just standing there looking in my direction. A few weeks before I moved out of the village about 2 years ago, in early December, I had a very bad night and couldn't really sleep. My flatmates left to visit their families, and my poor doggie had an upset stomach after stealing a block of cheese. Yes, she stole an entire block of cheddar because that's how she rolls. And I took her out for a walk, and to make sure she isn't sick or ends up with explosive diarrhea at night. And there was this weird semi-transparent fog that was more like smoke. And my village usually was still fairly active even at 1 a.m. But this time it all was, or felt unreal, and abandoned, and unnerving. And this is very important. I felt like the only person in the village that was alive. Even the street lamps with the lights felt artificial. Anyway, I was doing the round with the doggo, hoping she will be fine, and after maybe 10 or 15 minutes when walking on a path next to houses next to a field covered in this fog that was literally everywhere, I heard this surreal, high-pitched animalistic screech. It sounded like something was being pulled alive through a meat grinder and screaming in pain. My dog paused listening, and she bolted running and dragging me home. And let me tell you, my dog has a hearing issue, and she can't hear high-pitched sounds. She won't hear fireworks or anything like that, which was always a blessing. But back then, whatever that was, not only she heard it, but ran for her life in fear. When I got home, I locked all doors and sat in bed with the dog shaking like a leaf in the wind, and it took a solid hour to calm her down. I tried calling my friends to tell them about this, but I had no service for the entire night. I fell asleep with lights on and my dog cuddled into my side like she never has.